Finance and Auxiliary Services Committee. It's Monday, January 18th, and it is 5:31 p.m. There is a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance. There will be no full board action taken at any board committee meeting, and only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district's YouTube page. To watch the recording, please visit our School District of Menominee Falls YouTube site. We are meeting in Village Hall Upper Level Conference Room 3344/45 at West 156 North 8480 Pilgrim Road in Menominee Falls. Was the meeting properly posted?
Yes.
Okay. And so we'll move on to our discussion items. The first item is the creation of Fund 46.
All right, so we've got our facilities team here to, as we go through this, kind of step in at any point and kind of explain the rationale behind a Fund 46. I'll start with the big picture stuff and what it is and how it benefits us and why it's a great idea. So, as we know, school district finance is separated into buckets or different funds based on what activity is happening. Those expenses or revenues go in different buckets or different funds. The funds in the 40s, there's 41, 46, and 49. Those are our capital improvement funds, and that's where large expenses in terms of capital projects happen. We are looking at tonight at a Fund 46. Fund 46 is called a long-term capital improvement trust fund. So that's the full name of what a Fund 46 is. And going forward, we'll just call it Fund 46 in this meeting, so you know it stands for Long-Term Capital Improvement Trust Fund. A Fund 46 is funded from dollars, a transfer of dollars from Fund 10 or our general operating fund to Fund 46. So we're not talking about new money, we're not talking about a levy or an additional levy or a referendum or anything like that. These are truly dollars that we already are receiving in Fund 10 that we could transfer to Fund 46. So there are a few reasons why many districts or district would do this. There are majority of districts in the state, 75% of school districts already have a Fund 46. And there's really no losing argument with Fund 46. Like it's a win-win, and if our district chooses to open one and then decides not to use it, that's fine too. So I'll go through some of the benefits and then some of the specificities within the Fund 46 that make it unique. And then our facility folks can always chime in anytime too. So one of the main benefits is that a Fund 46 allows an opportunity at the end of the fiscal year to reallocate funds that were happening within Fund 10 to more fully expend the Fund 10 budget. So basically, if we have an underspent year where we're in July, we're closing out our books and we're projecting where we're going to end from that year that had just ended. If we're looking at a surplus from that year, we could make a transfer before the end of July from Fund 10 to Fund 46. And now those dollars are reserved for capital improvement needs. And again, on that same note, it reserves the ability in a separate account for us to earmark those dollars for capital improvement funds. Once dollars are moved into Fund 46, they stay in Fund 46. So it's a good way for us. It's kind of what we're doing already in terms of fund balance. If we have an additional surplus at the end of the year and know that there's a need, instead of just utilizing fund balance, now they're just in a Fund 46. They're already earmarked for that exact purpose. And then another big piece of this transfer gets complex, but I'm going to keep it high level. But let me know if you want to get into the weeds. Is for shared cost purposes, which impacts equalization aid, our goal is to always even out as best as we can our mill rate, so that taxpayers aren't seeing a roller coaster, but rather they're predictable tax rates. So if we have a super large expense one year and then less the next year, meaning if rather than using a Fund 46 for a giant project, we used fund balance for a giant project, we would see a very large increase in our expenses in Fund 10 that year, which would impact equalization aid and therefore our levy and our mill rate the following year. If instead of taking a large chunk of fund balance from Fund 10 and doing a capital project, Instead, we used money in Fund 46 that say had been allocated for 5 years in a much smaller amount. Now our equalization aid isn't doing as much of a roller coaster because what impacts aid is the transfer and not the actual expense from Fund 46. So it's the transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 46 that counts as the expense in terms of the equalization formula. So using Fund 46 and funding it in smaller amounts rather than, say, a $2 million one-time funding evens out our aid, which therefore evens out our tax levy and our mill rate for our taxpayers.
So I'll give you an example. There was a Fund 46 created before I arrived to my previous district, but it hadn't clocked past the 5-year actionable window. So within my first 2 years, it became usable. So all of a sudden, that money is aidable as well. The way the state funding formula works, that you're rewarded financially for spending all that you're being allotted. And if you underspend, then that changes how much money they're gonna allot in next year's. So for us using those dollars, A, it assists us like Caitlin was saying, but B, it also is aidable dollars. In one transfer, and I explained this in my interview process, now we were dealing with bigger dollars than what we would deal with because this is an initiation of the fund. So there's still gonna be a 5-year window before we can use it.
By
So that-
statute or just?
Statute.
Thank you.
So that's every district in the state. Now, I've reached out to the DPI, I'd be happy for them to shorten that up to 2 years, and so would Caitlin, and so would this district, but that is the law right now. 75% of districts use it, my last 2 districts used it, and I made a lot of progress without referendum dollars with capital improvement needs utilizing a Fund 46 pathway. Because there's just so many opportunities, you could float between budgets, the end of June doesn't necessarily become relevant because the fund is the fund. So it's highly recommended that we create Fund 46. Whether we use it or not, that's a decision for a later board. There is no use of any of the money in the near term. So we wouldn't fund it with lots of cash to start. If the board chooses to action a Fund 46, which we do recommend. But over time, once it gets closer to that 5-year window, future boards will have the opportunity to make some sort of financial moves over time that are beneficial to the taxpayer and to the 10-year plan that I know is coming up in comments.
So David mentioned a key point that we hadn't talked about yet is the 5-year timer. So as part of state statute, what we would need to do in order to start a Fund 46 is the board would approve it. So we would say the next meeting in January, the 22nd, would be a discussion, so similar to this, like all the what is Fund 46 101 type conversation and discussion, any questions, and then the following meeting, so it'd be our first February meeting, could be an action meeting. So we have to present to DPI minutes that a Fund 46 was approved by the board, and then we have to create a separate bank account, which is a non-issue, that's easy for us. And we have to show that to DPI, and then we have to do an initial funding, which could be $100. So say we funded $100, and then it's the date that that's funded, that your 5-year timer starts. It's a one-time 5-year timer, so 5 years from, February 2024, which would be February 2029, is when those funds would be available for us to use, and then there's no other 5-year timer. So like, we could contribute, say, that year would be, so we talked about February 29, so that's the 28-29 school year. We could contribute funds that year and use them that year, or use them the next year.
So it's just the initial
Initial,
deposit that's
yes.
frozen for 5 years, it's not like every time there's new money,
So
it has to wait 5 years.
Correct.
So let's say in 3 years, a future board decides to put $1 million in. I totally made that up.
Yes, you do.
But let's say they did in 3 years, then it would be able to withdraw within 2.
Okay.
So
Right.
yes, in every instance, the clock just starts with that $100.
Just the one time.
Well, I'm just thinking about, and I realize we're talking about, there's a 5-year clock, but
Yeah.
like, we have money in our contingency fund, which is in Fund 10.
Mhm.
And, you know, we had the opportunity that we needed to use it
Mhm.
for this upcoming thing, but that is a capital improvement. So again, had this money been there, I mean, so for many of the things that we would use contingency funds for, those are gonna be the larger projects. So again, just getting over the hurdle
Right.
of the 5 years, the money's pretty much, you know, usable for
Mhm.
any kind of large item anyway, so.
This is a long-range strategic
Yeah.
approach. We're setting up future boards for success. There's nothing that this board or next year's board or any, it has to wait the 5 years. I hope that changes, but it hasn't this is relatively new, meaning about a decade old-ish. So, when I came through master's degree 25 years ago, this didn't exist. This wasn't a thing. It was all Fund 41, which Caitlin mentioned, is one of the funds, Fund 41, 46, 49. But when 46 was new and created, there was presentations at the state level. I saw it up close in Menominee, because they had an actionable Fund 46 that they really used for substantial projects along the side of a capital referendum, which was interesting to see, so.
So the other, go ahead, your question?
I do.
Yep.
So with regards to the fact that the way it was laid out was that this would truly be funded based on surplus, do you set a budget and do you include money that
So
could go to
districts-
46, or is it truly just?
It could depend on the budget year, it could be
Okay.
dependent on the year, it could be this year, yes, next year, no.
Okay.
So some districts have, I've seen districts that have, for example, like a turf replacement plan. They have turf fields and they know that in 5 years, that field is gonna need replacing, it's gonna cost $1 million. So they actually do have an expenditure in their budget each year of, you name it, $100, $200, $300,000, whatever it is, as a 10 expenditure and a Fund 46 revenue each year within the next 5 years. Or some districts just have it as they've approved it and it's a thing for them, and then at the end of the year, they could say, we have a surplus, we are transferring the entire surplus or X percentage of our surplus to Fund 46. So you're not locked into anything, it's very safe, it's very flexible. The only thing that's not flexible is 5-year timer, and that the funds, once they're in Fund 46, are only for capital projects. So
Okay.
you can't undo it, you can't transfer back to Fund 10.
And will the money ever expire?
No.
No.
Just,
So the other piece of it is that we have to have a 10-year capital improvement plan, which the facilities team has put together. And we've had one, and we looked at it a few meetings ago, and the facilities team now expanded it for the next 10 years. So this has to be approved as part of our Fund 46 approval, creation of a Fund 46. However, the 10-year capital project plan can and does change often and just needs board approval when it is changed. Which could happen at every board meeting if we wanted it to. So again, it's very flexible. This, I'm pulling it up now, is the,
And I'll give you an example how that
Okay.
works. Last year, I had an actionable Fund 46, and we were changing items. Once we identified things that, we missed and that really belongs in the capital plan, we'd come to the board, have it approved, make sure that the board approved it, and then the expenditure would be after said approval through Fund 46. So those approvals are rolling. Once you get through your 5-year timeline. There's a decision about parking lot, for example, because we've had some discussions about parking lot. All of a sudden, that gets added to the plan, we reprioritize it. So this is a living, breathing list that should come monthly or every other month, very often and regularly to this committee. For once things are completed, they get taken off the list, new things go on. I think this is extremely well done and gives us a good starting point with the team for where we are and capital needs as we go.
so do you guys wanna talk about, just at a high level, what we're looking at in this
Yep,
10-year
yep,
plan?
yep. So what you guys see here is we basically went through all of the reports, whether they were in many cases whether it was from our roofing report, whether it was from our hardscape report, and I took all of that information that was from 2021, so a little dated, although we are going to have that updated, so just more current information, more of a current assessment, and plugged all of these things in here. Also met with Joel and Sarah when we did this, and Joel also got me the end of life information, whether it was from chillers, whether it was your HVAC plants in a nutshell. That is also a big part of this thing. And there were some other things that, that were really kind of aha stuff for us. One of the things we talked about is other things that we've never really tracked on a CIP budget before, but literally really need to be in here, so it was much more holistic. Whether it was, the press box. If I showed you guys pictures of the press box up at the soccer stadium, it's in horrible shape. But prior boards, and Carrie, you'll remember this too, that wasn't something that was funded that way, but it's also something that needs some attention. Here we've got this brand new facility, that thing's in horrible shape. But, right down to playground equipment and camera upgrades. We didn't necessarily have funds that we set aside to plan for this stuff. Talked about the flooring within our buildings, whether we talked about lighting within our buildings. And as a matter of fact, if you don't mind, Kaylin, going way down at the bottom, and I know I'm kind of fast tracking a little bit. These are just other things that we wanted to make sure that we had on our radar as we were developing this, like fire alarm panels, what's the age, when's the next one's due, our fencing. We didn't have a plan for that. Window or door replacement, locks, and obviously then our school and nutrition areas. And we talk about soundproofing at Valley View and Shady Lane. These are just big cost items that we knew about, but we did not necessarily have written down or have a plan for in regards to replacing. So as we started down, now you can go back up to the top, Caitlin.
Even as simple as bells and paging.
As what?
Bells and paging. It's something that, we've changed some out, but it's always when the other one's failing, and it's always more of we gotta do something before something bad happens. So,
So that was the North Middle School PA system, right?
yeah,
That was replaced this year?
Yeah, so Jennifer, I remember the last time we met, you had mentioned hey, I've never seen this stuff before. I remember that. And I took that into consideration as we were doing this whole thing. The other thing is, so you'll notice as we've created these different years, that the price is extreme. And we also know where our 675 comes into play, and I know Caitlin was putting in the deficit. And we tried to do it in a few different fashions. What we tried to do was identify the school, taking it offline and doing as much within that building as we potentially could, knowing that we can modify things. The other part is to make sure that we had a plan that we could literally share with our other buildings in regards to, what's on this list, but also get their feedback. So we've been doing feedback loops with all of the administrators at the buildings, haven't got them all done yet. But we're starting to share out this stuff in regards to what's going on in their buildings. Also get feedback to make sure hey, is there anything that we're missing from your perspective? And we'll do it again in February, March actually.
I didn't get a chance to look at the list, but out of curiosity, are the pools on there somewhere? Cause
So-
I know that we removed diving boards, and I know that there's a whole hey, we're sharing schools and we can't have a full diving.
Yep,
team.
so we do have, it should be the high school pool.
27, 28.
I don't think we
Where your
have pool replacement in there.
We do not have pool
Or
replacement.
Huh?
So that would be intense pool replacement.
I see a lot in 27, 28.
It's more the upgrading.
Yeah,
So ongoing maintenance.
Yeah, so as you
Years
talk
and
about the
filters.
diving board, I'll give you a little backstory about the diving board, although I kinda wanna keep on track here. The diving board, when it had to be removed from the high school, unless that could have been repaired with parts specific to that diving board, you could not bring a new diving board into the high school and have it be approved. We're how many inches are we shy?
3 inches, I think.
3 inches shy of it being a
I
legit
think
diving.
we're at 11, and I think it needs to be 14.
Yeah, so the only way, and I know that's a pain point for Brian because we gotta go over to Germantown. In all reality, the bottom of the pool would have to be busted out and everything would need to be done that in order, so that's the
So at
backstory.
that point, you're at a new aquatic facility.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, you're not just gonna dig it down, you're gonna expand the pool at that point.
natatorium, right?
Yeah, and then to look at the pools at 32, 33, those sand filters, I mean, that's the heart transplant of the pool.
Right.
You know, without a sand filter, you don't have a pool. So,
Right now, we have DE, and as of right now, Madison considers DE a carcinogen, and they consider it a hazardous waste. It's a matter of time before we are forced to adapt.
Yeah.
Even though DE is a better product and it filters way better than sand ever will.
So I have a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just, while we're sitting here, total up what the amount is across the 10 years, unless you have it handy? Just interested to know, it looks like you have a really good referendum list going. So can we gain interest on the account when we move it into Fund 46?
Yep.
Okay, and that's just based on the market rate?
Yep.
Okay, and then what about these items, Chris, you referenced this, that historically we would flag for Booster Club or like PTO replacement versus
Yep.
the district paying? Are you gonna maybe look to notate that on here?
So at this point, in all reality, kind of where this thing's at like right now, Carrie, is in order for us to even create a Fund 46 for you guys to even look at it, we needed to have a 10-year plan and literally, I'm not gonna say that this is a rough draft, but it certainly can get tweaked.
Yep. Yeah, and I just think it's important because, you know, one of the reasons some of those projects haven't been on there in the past is because
Yeah.
you wanna encourage our groups to fundraise on our
No
behalf.
question, no question, no question.
Okay, and then to start this, would you then be
Yes.
recommending to move money from the fund balance?
I
Because
would,
you're saying we have to open an
I would
account.
recommend a fund, I'm thinking $100 from Fund 10, not fund balance, just our general operating budget. And there's no minimum, like 100 is fine,
Okay,
it just starts our 10-year timer.
okay.
5 years.
Sorry, 5-year timer, I keep saying Fund 10 and it's 10's in my head.
and
Our
future,
5-year timer.
future boards could make decisions about, as we start to move along. I mean, this is clearly a strategic move, and this 10-year plan is a very good thing for the strategic planning process. I mean, put it out in front, make it public and the board should change it. If there's something that the community should be funding and shouldn't be on here, by all means, change it at the next meeting. I mean, yes, and
But it's a good starting spot to be
Yes.
able to get the conversation going, and I
Yeah.
agree. I kind of thought in the back of my head, like, there's some joint efforts here to be able to say, hey, Boosters does some, PTOs do some, and then, hey, it's a shared expense.
Cause I mean, unfortunately, that 20 million or whatever's behind
20
here,
million.
you know, in 5 years, it's gonna be 40 million, you know, so it's just important to keep that in mind.
it's true.
Thank you for totaling that up.
No problem.
That is all my questions.
Anything else?
Anything else on this item, other questions or comments?
Focus.
Do we need anything else
By the way, that
before-
was awesome.
It's been a day, I'm so sorry.
Before we will put this on for a full board discussion, do we need anything else in this committee, or can we bring it on to our next January 22nd full board? Okay.
And if there are any questions that come up, if other board members shoot you questions, just shoot them to Caitlin. I mean, she's up to speed fully on this and can delve into a lot of deep,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the
Did you- have
debatable.
you
We talk about tertiary aid, we can talk about.
Yeah, there's that, I mean, there's so many pieces of this, once you dig into it and really get deep on how it's aidable, what does that mean,
Right.
or positively aided, I mean, we're not going into that depth, cause we're talking about $100 to start.
And that's why I say there's not really a downside to it.
Correct.
I guess if we funded it with $100 and then we never used Fund 46 ever, then we would be out $100, but we absolutely could fund it, some project, you know, $100 worth out of that. So there's really no downside, and as Mr. Rooney said, it's just really long-term planning. Did I interrupt you? Were you gonna say something?
Nope.
Okay.
All right, Well, then we can move on to the next item on the agenda. We do, just as a time check, our board meeting starts at 6:30. So, moving on to school safety drill reporting.
Okay, so this is just an annual item that comes to our finance committee meeting as part of Act 143. So it's part of our State Department of Justice annual reporting requirements, along with our school safety plan, which our board reviewed in December. And what schools are required to do is hold at least one safety drill, which in our words is a lockdown or a hold, and then reflect on it. So that is in the attached document. All of our principals have done that within the time frame. It has to be done before the end of the calendar year, so within the first few months of school, and then they do a reflection on it. And I will say, like, the reflections are great, but they do so much more than this. This is, you know, this is the requirement, but they're thinking about this all the time, and this is the formality of reporting it. But there's a lot more that goes into it than just them writing a paragraph about reflection on the daily drill. So
We had an hour-long meeting today about the new security cameras at the high school, and you know, we could delve into that in and of
Right.
itself. But yes, that is absolutely right. We do a lot more than this. This is just the requirement for state law.
So we're just required to show our board annually.
Could you just scroll down so we can see the
Yep.
other schools?
So Ben Franklin, Riverside, Shady Lane.
Just slow down a little bit.
Okay, you're reading them, okay,
Well, I'm not like reading in detail, I'm just looking to see if there's any like lessons learned,
sure.
unless you wanna highlight any.
I mean, they talk, like, schools talk about their staffing, they talk about what do we need to re-up with our teachers. Obviously, they're all age appropriate, so you're gonna see a different reflection from our littles at Shady Lane. Versus our, you know, middle school and high schoolers.
Just scroll down.
So I remember North not only had their drill, but didn't they have, we had some tornado drill or some severe storm event come up? And they all ended up in there and they're like, it was a real thing versus a drill. Obviously
It was
reading
last year's
this,
tornado.
yeah, like it just brings up the fact that, hey, this reflection truly is on the drill, and to the point of, hey, there's a lot more reflection and work that goes
Oh,
on.
yeah.
They don't bring on anything additional, it's just pertaining to the drill.
Right. My scroll is.
These two map here. So David, was there anything you highlighted with the principals then after you reviewed this?
We talk regularly about safety. Some of the focus is, we're coming up on a tabletop safety in January. That's gonna be a setup for a June mock drill with Freighter, the police department, fire department. A lot of agencies were using value, so we've been more focused on how their drills gonna lean into that. Actually, we have a leadership meeting this week where that is actually Wednesday morning, where that is one of the key topics about connecting the tabletop drill to the mock and who's all gonna be involved actually in person in our end of the year mock drill, which we've been planning for months now.
And then what's your sort of preference? I noticed the differentiation of like some of the schools tell the teachers, some of them don't, in terms of planned, unplanned, like how do you feel like that's worked now as you're looking at each of our buildings and our principals?
You know, I think when it comes right down to it, that's more of a feel for their building. You know, I've run buildings for a lot of years, really that has to do with special needs populations, moving people from the upper level to lower levels, and which actual drill they're running. Is it a fire drill? Is it a hold drill, lockdown drill, tornado drill? Obviously for all of these, there's some different things that come in. Tornado drills are a little bit more complicated, just based on holds and lifts and where you're gonna put people, but my general sense is, and like I said, I haven't found an unlocked door yet, and we're gonna keep pushing on that. Door security is something that Chris's team has done a great job with. It's been a focus of ours that eventually we'll be connecting a lot of those improvements to our new systems that are going online, the camera systems the board is just paid for at the start of the year. So we're starting to see a nexus with a lot of the new that's coming in, with our Raptor system, because we see drills all the time. You know, I'm in the building, I'm here, we're being activated with the drills. So I think all the buildings are doing a good job of A, drilling, B, making sure they're aware of different types of drills. You're just seeing one description, but you know, I see different drills all the time in multiple buildings. Sometimes when I'm there, sometimes I'm planned to be there, just because I'm notified when they are. But they're doing a good job of varying the drills, but also making changes as needed. Making changes as needed. That's actually the point, one of the main points of the mock drill at the end of the year is we're going through and making a lot of safety upgrades and changes this year. But by the end of the year, we're gonna say, hey, we made all these changes and all these upgrades, but we're still gonna run a live, you know, with multiple outside agencies to see what else can we change, what else can we improve, even though we've made all of these changes, electronic and doors and all these sorts of things. And the police and the fire and freighter, they've been great. And then our own staff, our nurses, a lot of people are involved. Chris is directly involved in that, along with Troy and others.
Great.
Okay. Excellent. We have one last item on the agenda, and that is the 2024-2025 budget planning calendar.
Right, so this one really stays very much the same from year to year with just the changing of the actual dates that meetings fall on. So a very cyclical calendar that happens with our budget each year. In January, we are looking at initial forecasts, and as we just talked about, or we'll be talking about tonight, open enrollment. And then that's a discussion tonight, and then the second meeting in January is always where the board would approve or not approve new open enrollment seats based on available space. In February is when our schools are in the grind of registering for classes, middle school and high school, which is a key part of staffing, which obviously is a key part of our budget. So that all works hand in hand, and with a preliminary staffing plan in February at the end of the month, with a joint finance and personnel committee. We'll also have a budget presentation next week as a very preliminary budget presentation, and then again, as we move into the spring. We look, again, it all aligns with staffing, when notices are due, non-renewals, and contracts. So that is March through April, and final contracts for teachers issued in May. Again, throughout that time, we're working on our budget. We are doing budget meetings within our finance committee. We're doing budget meetings within our full board, and making sure that our community is informed of the dates that we're meeting, that they are able to participate in public comments if needed, et cetera. So through summer then, we are getting teacher contracts back, well, I should say through mid-June, and then continuing to look at the preliminary budget. We've historically approved it anywhere from June to August. There's no state statute or anything that says that a budget has to be approved before the start of the fiscal year. It just really has to be approved before the annual meeting, because we present our annual meeting budget based on the approved preliminary budget. So our draft of our budget planning calendar right now is that our preliminary budget would be approved before the end of June, but if that goes into July or August, that's just fine. And then September, as always, is our annual meeting. So right now that's September 9th, 2024. Our pupil count is always the third Friday in September, so that's our first pupil count. This year we had a power outage on our pupil count day, and we're looking at potentially snow this Friday, which is our second pupil count day of the year, so we're like, oh, come on.
That is what I was actually looking at when I was a little distracted, was the radar.
Was Friday?
Was radar and projections for Friday.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
It was Friday. Yeah, it was Friday.
So, yeah, I don't, weather is what it is. And then October is when we get a lot of our final and very important and impactful budget information. So our third Friday pupil count results, we get our state aid certification, which impacts our tax levy, and our equalized property values which impact our mill rate. And then as always, we approve our budget at the end of October and certify the tax levy, and then those are due to the municipalities in the beginning of November. So no real big changes since last year and last time we did this.
Is there any changes or adjustments now that the teachers have unionized?
So the timeline, there's a lot of things that are statutorily mandated in terms of the, I kind of work backwards, but like when the contracts are due and then when they're due to the staff. So those all stay the same, it's just when the meetings happen with the union before that. Good question.
Anything else? Okay, well then I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
A motion.
Okay. Motion to adjourn by Ms. Holzman,
Second?
second by Ms. Deuce. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned and can turn off the recording.
So yeah, 5:20.